the ache in your bones, that's where wisdom begins. There's a silence that claws, a quiet born not of peace, but of an abyss witnessed firsthand. A silence that doesn't demand attention. No, it desperately needs to be comprehended, to be felt in its raw, unyielding weight. A soul forged in the crucible doesn't emerge as it was before the flames engulfed it. It returns hushed, almost spectral, fiercely guarded. This isn't from a dearth of love, understand, but from witnessing love twisted, weaponized, destroyed. It retreats, a wounded animal seeking the solace of shadow. Some will label it detachment. Others will accuse you of being excessive, intense, too much to handle. But Carl Jung, he understood the hidden currents. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. A bitter truth, isn't it? The suffering we attempt to bury doesn't decompose quietly in the earth. Instead, it metastasizes, becoming the tremor in our voice, the reflexive flinch, the impenetrable wall that rises when intimacy threatens to breach our defenses. If you've ever gazed into the mirror and encountered a stranger staring back, know this: you are not adrift. The mask you wear, the facade of strength, of serenity, of perpetual smiles, it's not a fabrication. It's the armor that carried you through the inferno, that shielded you from betrayal's sting, abandonment's hollowness, humiliation's burn. Jung called it the persona, the carefully constructed social face we present to navigate the treacherous waters of existence. But the peril arises when we forget the authentic face hidden beneath the layers of artifice, when the mask becomes us. Those who have tasted profound sorrow don't merely erect barriers, they sculpt entire universes, vast, intricate inner worlds to which they flee when the external world becomes unbearably harsh, and the world outside, in its ignorance, often misinterprets their retreat. They're not inaccessible, lost to the world. They're paralyzed by the terror that connection will lead to fragmentation, to being shattered into a million irreparable pieces again. That vulnerability will unleash a torrent of tears. That hope is merely a prelude to devastating loss. Jung illuminated that pain is not punitive, but a signal flare, a desperate cry in the dark. He proclaimed, "There's no coming to consciousness without pain." A harsh truth, but truth nonetheless. Yet, no one provides a manual for deciphering pain's cryptic language. We're conditioned to smother it, to anesthetize it, to rationalize it away. And so it festers, transforming into a shadow, lurking silently but perpetually present, a constant, dull ache. We delude ourselves into believing we've moved forward, transcended the past. But no, we've merely adapted. We've learned to function. We've mastered the art of the socially acceptable smile. Meanwhile, deep within, the soul remains trapped in the precise instant of its fracturing, replaying the trauma on an endless loop. Jung termed this the formation of a complex, a tangled web of emotions and memories, buried deep within the unconscious, compulsively repeating itself until we summon the courage to confront it, to untangle its threads. Imagine a child who grew up feeling transparent, unseen, not because of overt cruelty, but because their very existence was consistently overlooked. That child carries that invisibility forward. They morph into adults who meticulously dissect every message, every pregnant silence. They succumb to panic when someone withdraws, not out of neediness, but because the absence reverberates with the chilling familiarity of a prison cell they've inhabited before. When you witness someone overreacting, I implore you, pause. You may not be the intended target of their reaction. You may be inadvertently triggering an ancient echo, a resurrected pain that finds a familiar resonance in your words or your absence. They're not unhinged. They're trapped in survival mode, their nervous system screaming danger. To truly understand the behavior of someone who has endured profound suffering is to step onto hallowed ground. You don't trespass with judgment in your heart. You approach with reverence, with a deep understanding of the scars they carry. Jung wisely observed, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. A fundamental truth etched in the very fabric of our being. We are each uniquely sculpted by the trials we have faced, the storms we have weathered. Some transform into tireless caretakers, not because they possess an inexhaustible well of empathy, but because they are fundamentally unable to receive. They bestow love as if it were an apology, a desperate attempt to atone for some unknown sin. They dedicate themselves to fixing others, to avoid confronting the brokenness within themselves. They are lauded for their strength, their reliability, their unwavering kindness. But beneath the surface, they are drowning in a sea of unspoken pain. That is not love, my friends. That is the ultimate abandonment of the self, the sacrifice of one's own needs on the altar of external validation. Others morph into solitary wolves, fiercely independent, proudly self-sufficient. But that bravado is often a carefully constructed facade, concealing a childhood lesson learned the hard way. That help will never arrive. So they cease to ask. They navigate life's treacherous terrain alone, not out of choice, but because dependence feels like a reckless gamble with potentially devastating consequences. Then there are those who dwell perpetually within the labyrinth of their minds, the thinkers, the analysts, the philosophers. But lurking behind that formidable intellect is often a raw, unhealed wound, because to feel is to risk shattering into pieces, and they have invested a lifetime in painstakingly reassembling themselves. Jung cautioned that excessive intellectualizing is a shield against the onslaught of feeling, a fortress constructed of thoughts, designed to repel any emotional breach. Others seek solace in numbing agents, food, unrelenting activity, the pursuit of unattainable perfection, not out of a lack of willpower, but out of a desperate craving for safety. Inner turmoil manifests as an insatiable need for external control. And finally, there are those who simply vanish emotionally, becoming ghosts in their own lives. You engage in conversation, but your words fail to penetrate the surface. Their eyes are present but distant, detached. They have mastered the art of disappearing without physically moving, becoming masters of emotional evasion. Dissociation isn't a weakness. It's a testament to the psyche's remarkable resilience, its innate survival instinct. The mind recognizes that when the body is trapped, escape is still possible through the power of detachment by soaring to another place. So, what course of action do we take, armed with this understanding? We cease our relentless judgment. We begin to truly witness, to observe with empathy. We recognize that every behavior, no matter how perplexing, is a narrative concealed beneath layers of pain and experience. We abandon the self-deprecating question, "What's wrong with me?" and replace it with a quest for understanding. What burdens am I still carrying? What unresolved traumas still haunt me? Jung's profound contribution lies not in providing definitive answers, but in gifting us with a language, a framework for understanding the intricate tapestry of the human psyche. He provided a map to navigate the treacherous terrain of our inner world, to recognize that our reactions are messengers, that our shadows are guides, that our pain is not a dead end, but a doorway to profound transformation. When you've endured too much suffering, love ceases to feel like a blissful dream and begins to resemble a treacherous test, a high-stakes gamble with your heart. Not out of inherent cynicism, but because experience has taught you, through the searing pain of betrayal, the agonizing sting of absence, that not everyone who utters the words, "I care," genuinely means them. So, when a new presence enters your life, you don't greet them with open arms and unquestioning trust. You meet them with quiet, observant eyes, with a heart shielded by layers of caution, with unspoken questions swirling within your mind. Because this time, you prioritize safety over visibility. You yearn to feel secure before you allow yourself to be truly seen, to be truly vulnerable. You observe. You analyze. You meticulously scan for inconsistencies, not out of malice or suspicion, but out of self-preservation. Because you have been blindsided before, and the soul never forgets the sting of betrayal. You meticulously analyze their words, their stories, the subtle shifts in their demeanor. You refrain from making accusations, but you remain vigilant, acutely aware of potential red flags. A part of you is perpetually questioning, is this genuine? Or am I on the verge of being deceived again? You perceive the energy that vibrates beneath their words more keenly than the words themselves. When they proclaim, "I'm fine," you hear the unspoken pain they are attempting to conceal. When they break a seemingly insignificant promise, you may not utter a word, but a deeply ingrained alarm bell rings within you, because you have learned that subtle inconsistencies can be the harbinger of a catastrophic betrayal, and you are unwilling to relive that nightmare. So you embody both the lover and the protector, embracing a dual role. You offer love in measured doses, cautiously opening the door just enough to breathe. You wait, you observe, and when something feels amiss, even subtly, your body sounds the alarm. Your gut clenches, your chest constricts, your spirit whispers a warning. This feels unsafe. It's not paranoia, my friend. It's wisdom etched into your very being by the searing heat of heartbreak. And even as a part of you desperately yearns to trust, to surrender to hope, another part relentlessly recalls the devastating consequences of ignoring that inner voice. So now you listen. You listen intently, even when they reassure you that everything is perfect. You listen even when they smile. You listen for the unspoken truths that lie in the spaces between words, because you have learned that silence can sometimes carry the weight of truth more powerfully than any spoken word. And perhaps you long for a different reality. Perhaps you yearn to simply relax, to surrender to the moment, to fall in love with the effortless ease that is so often romanticized. But for you, love is weighty, burdened by the echoes of the past. It carries the heavy baggage of memory. It is haunted by ghosts of relationships past. You approach relationships with one hand poised on the door, ready to flee. Not because you are predisposed to leave, but because you have been forced to abandon ship before, to prioritize your own survival. So now, even in moments of profound joy and connection, a part of you remains perpetually vigilant, prepared for the silence to descend, for the shift in energy, for the inevitable withdrawal. And that is not a testament to your brokenness. It is a celebration of your survival, a testament to your strength. But I understand that it is exhausting, this perpetual state of hyper-awareness, always reading the subtle cues in a room, always double-checking the emotional atmosphere, always striving to decipher the underlying meaning behind someone's words. You yearn to trust, to relinquish control, to simply rest. But vulnerability feels like a dangerous liability. So you test, not to manipulate or play games, but to assess their stability, their resilience. You ask seemingly insignificant questions, not to trap them in a lie, but to feel their true energy, their authentic self. Will they remain present when I retreat into silence? Will they stay when I become emotionally distant? Will they still care when I become challenging to love? You're not seeking perfection. You never have been. You're yearning for authenticity, for unwavering steadiness, for someone who can gaze unflinchingly into the depths of your shadows and not recoil in fear. You may suppress your doubts, concealing them beneath a veneer of composure, but within the silent chambers of your heart, you are pleading, "Can I truly trust you? Will you betray me? Are you here for me, or simply for the way I make you feel?" And if you detect dishonesty, even a subtle undercurrent, it triggers an internal alarm, a piercing siren that shatters the illusion of safety. Perhaps you don't confront it directly. Perhaps you extend the benefit of the doubt, clinging to the hope that you have misread the signs. But a part of you, a deeply vulnerable part, begins to quietly, imperceptibly, permanently close off. Because when someone you entrusted your heart to has betrayed you, your nervous system never fully recovers. The memory of that violation remains etched into your very being. You notice the subtle hesitation before their response. You perceive the barely perceptible shift in their tone. You detect the evasiveness in their eyes. And while others may overlook these subtle cues, you cannot, because you have learned that pain doesn't always announce its arrival with thunderous pronouncements. Sometimes it tiptoes in stealthily, disguised in kind words and disarming smiles, a wolf in sheep's clothing. So, how do you navigate this treacherous landscape? How do you move forward, carrying the weight of your past? You proceed with deliberate caution, allowing your heart to thaw gradually, one delicate layer at a time. You observe not only what they say, but who they are when they believe they are unobserved. Do they extend compassion when you retreat into silence? Do they reach out when you become emotionally distant? Do they listen not just to your words, but to the unspoken truths that reside in your pauses? That is how you discern. And if they resort to dishonesty, even about trivial matters, about things that seem insignificant to others, it inflicts a pain far deeper than they can comprehend. not because the lie itself is monumental, but because it triggers an ancient wound, a buried trauma, a sacred memory that still holds you captive. We begin by turning toward the sources of our pain, not away from them. We engage in a dialogue, a courageous exploration of the inner landscape. What wisdom do you wish to impart? What are you desperately striving to protect? What memories do you still guard with fierce protectiveness as if they were priceless treasures? Because that is the paradoxical nature of pain. It doesn't seek to destroy you, to annihilate your spirit. It craves recognition, respect, acknowledgement. It yearns for you to remember, to honor the experiences that have shaped you. And through that conscious act of remembering, of acknowledging the past, its power begins to diminish, its grip begins to loosen. Those who have endured profound suffering often possess an extraordinary gift. They become mirrors, reflecting the emotions of others with uncanny accuracy. They perceive what others fail to see. They detect subtle shifts in energy, in tone, in the pregnant silences between words. They feel everything with an amplified intensity. But if they haven't embarked on their own journey of healing, they risk losing themselves in the emotional currents of others. They morph into rescuers, neglecting their own needs, forgetting that they too deserve to be rescued. True healing isn't synonymous with perpetual strength, with unwavering independence, with flawless wisdom, or with unattainable perfection. It's about becoming whole, about integrating all aspects of oneself, even the parts that are deemed undesirable or unacceptable. And to achieve wholeness, we must cease to sever parts of ourselves simply because they make others uncomfortable. There is no shame in having walls, in erecting protective barriers. There is only profound sadness when we lose sight of the reasons why we built them in the first place. The ultimate journey, Jung declared, is individuation, the lifelong process of becoming one's true self, of embracing one's unique essence. And that journey invariably leads through the underworld of our own psyche, through the dark valleys of grief, through the fiery peaks of rage, through the desolate landscapes of longing, through everything we were conditioned to suppress, to deny, to hide from the world. You are not a problem to be solved, a puzzle to be deciphered. You are a story waiting to unfold, a masterpiece waiting to be unveiled. When we muster the courage to listen to our pain without fear, without judgment, something miraculous occurs. The wound transforms into a wise teacher, guiding us toward deeper understanding. The shadows cease their incessant shouting, their relentless torment. And the inner child, the vulnerable, wounded part of ourselves that yearned for someone to return, to utter the right words, to offer unconditional love, begins to feel safe, perhaps for the first time. And in that newfound sense of safety, we don't attempt to erase the past, to rewrite history. We integrate it, weaving it into the rich tapestry of our lives. We don't forget the pain we endured. We learn how to carry it with compassion, with tenderness. We don't feign that everything is fine when it isn't. We acknowledge the lingering pain, the open wounds. We declare, this still hurts, but I'm here. I'm not running anymore. I am present for myself. Those who have suffered the most intensely often emerge as the gentlest souls, radiating compassion and understanding because they possess first-hand knowledge of what it means to traverse through fire barefoot, to navigate life with raw, exposed nerves. They don't seek to inflict pain on others. They yearn to understand, to connect, to heal. But they too require validation, reassurance, compassion. They too deserve to be understood. So, if you identify with this narrative, if your reactions sometimes startle even you, if your silences are misconstrued as indifference, if your emotional distance is actually a desperate plea for safety, know this: you are not broken, my friend. You are layered, complex, profound. You are a soul that has learned to persevere, to keep moving forward, even when the map disintegrated, even when the path ahead seemed shrouded in impenetrable darkness. And now, perhaps, it is time to begin the journey home. Not through force or coercion, but through the gentle embrace of self-love. Because healing isn't a destination to be reached, a prize to be won. It's a return, a homecoming, a return to the essence of who you were before the world forgot how to cradle you, how to nurture your spirit. Welcome back, dear one. Welcome to the Wisdom Gate, where your story matters, where your pain is not dismissed or minimized, where your soul remembers that it has never been and will never be truly alone. And if this message resonated within you, leave a comment below. I'm learning to come home to myself. Let that be your fragile, beautiful beginning. A beginning which is just the end of the old fear.